Hey, I'm here at Laurie Strode's house for this introduction to this week's episode of Horror Timelines, which is actually a little bit different because we're going to be doing updates. That's right. It's been 3 years since I've done this channel, and quite a few series that I've covered have now had new entries, and I figured it's time to touch back up with those and see if the continuity is kind of still holds up with the new entries. So the first one we're going to go all the way back to episode 2. It feels like forever ago.
Our first update goes all the way back to episode 2 with an update to the Texas Chainsaw franchise with 2017's Leatherface. When we last left off this series, this is what we decided. The first and second film were one continuity. The first and third were a separate continuity. The first and fourth were yet another separate continuity. The remake and the second part of the remake were its own continuity. And then finally, the first and Texas Chainsaw 3D were its own continuity.
That's a lot of continuities.
Well, this one starts out on a Sawyer farm, and we meet younger Drayton and Jedediah, so it seems that we're linked to Texas Chainsaw 3D, or at least the earlier films, since they're not the Hewitts from the remakes. I guess that this is young Nubbins and younger Grandpa, and they let us know that it's 1955, so a little less than 20 years earlier than the original film. Mini fact, this character is supposed to be the father of Sally and Franklin, although it's not stated in the film itself. Deacon Frost shows up, and it's supposed to be the father of Bert from 3D, and he takes Jed away from the family. We bounce to 10 years later, so it's 1965 now, and there's a couple of kids here, and this one sure looks like what we think Leatherface would look like as a teenager. And they say that they changed his name and he'll be 18 soon, so he was most likely born around 1947, placing him at about 26 during the events of the original film. They escape, taking handsome Jackson here and Nurse Elizabeth, and the police give chase and eventually kill old Bud, eliminating him as a suspect for being Leatherface. When Jackson gets shot in the face, it looks like he's our guy, and Hartman is the villain. And they try to fix Jed Jackson's face, and of course the Sawyers are an even bigger villains, and the Saw finally gets some action. He kills Elizabeth and starts stitching his first skin mask, so there's clearly a prequel to the first film, and fits well with its continuity characters, but its efforts to link in 3D don't work. Sheriff Hartman is supposed to be the father of Bert Hartman from that film, and the writer claims that the chronology is Leatherface, then the original, and then 3D, but with the Bert character being a grown man of at least 30-something in the intro to 3D, that makes him like about in his 70s in the later film, which makes no sense. But then again, that film's timeline doesn't work in the first place, so it makes more sense as Leatherface, the original, and then Texas Chainsaw 2. Or 3. Or 4, or really any of them, except for Texas Chainsaw 3D.
So all said and done, I guess that works okay. The movie's not that great. It's not terrible. It's just not that great. For the next update, we're going to go back to episode 5 and actually check in on one of my favorite little guys and see how he's doing.
So, way back when I created my Leprechaun video, one of the things I suggested was that every movie featured a different Leprechaun and that it wasn't the same character from film to film. That was confirmed in 2018's Leprechaun Returns, which was a direct continuity of the first film and tells of young Lila going to fix up an old house. And Ozzy's back looking quite a bit older, and it's revealed that Lila is the daughter of Tori and that she died a year ago because for some reason Jennifer Aniston declined to appear in this one. And I imagine that was a tough choice. Lila's in college, so we're at the very least 18 years past the original, and we go back to the old house, and we meet our sorority victims. Ozzy gets slime splashed, and our old buddy Lubden pops out of his belly. Ozzy says he killed him 25 years ago, so if we go with the original taking place in 93, we're in real-time 2018. The Lep is no longer played by Warwick Davis because he declined to reappear in this one, and I imagine that was a tough choice. He's talking in rhyme again, and his shoeshine obsession is back, and...
It could be a crackhead who got a hold of the wrong stuff. It's a leprechaun!
Sick reference movie.
People start dying, the Lep is impervious to physical harm, and bald again, while Ozzy's ghost helps Lila, They use iron against him, which works pretty well, and they pump him full of liquefied clover to blow him up. There's a new wrinkle that says if any part of a leprechaun exists, then the little guy still lives. So we get multiple mini-leps, and he reforms, so they electrocute him and he burns, but the next day he's fine and headed to Bismarck.
So that makes sense, and it was actually pretty enjoyable. I'll let you stand there. But yeah, I got a kick out of that. That was a lot of fun. But for our next update, we're actually going to go to the very next episode, which was episode 6. We're going to check in on the Phantasm boys and see if that makes sense. Phantasm and makes sense. That's a phrase that doesn't really go well together.
The tall man made his final appearance in 2016's Phantasm Ravager, and we last left our guys back in 1988, but Reggie's back in the desert, and he's not directed by Don Coscarelli for the first time. He's back on Earth after quite a while, but it's not clear how long. He immediately and rather coincidentally gets his CUDA back, and the balls are back. But we take a turn as Reg is also in a hospital with dementia, with Mike visiting him. The alternate bits with him in the car are the story that he's telling Mike, and he looks younger, so it's likely that those segments are set further back in the past. And this girl is reading Living Color by Kate Coscarelli, which came out in 1987, so we're at least past that. I'm thinking that we're probably a short time after part 4 here, and it's still 1988 or possibly early 89, with Reg wandering the desert after making his way back through the portal. Jebediah Morningside reappears in the delusion. Daniel Roebuck pops in for a second, but Mike doesn't seem to know what Reg is talking about, but he brings up the notion of parallel universes. Reg enters another gateway and meets the tall man, and the first film's Lady in Lavender returns as well. We then take a hard turn as Reg ends up in an alternate future with Mike, who says it's been a decade since the ending of Part 4, which would place these events in 1998, and the tall man's taken over the Earth. And there's a spiky sphere, and Reg bounces back and forth from reality to reality for a while, and we get Mike's version of events after 88, and he tells us about the invasion, and there's a face-off in which the tall man is exploded, and depending upon how you want to interpret this ending, we either see Mike, Jody, and Reg team up in the apocalyptic reality, while the other reality Reg passes away with Mike and Jody at his side. It's kind of up to the viewer to decide if both realities exist, or if the invasion reality is just a figment of Reg's delusions, although a mid-credit sequence with the return of Rocky from the third film seemed to suggest that reality is definitely real, at least.
And we're back at the Casa de Myers for the final update of the night. We're going to check in with the Shape himself and see what his newest movie brought in terms of continuity. And I think you kind of know where this one is going to go, because this gets a little weird. And hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there. Always wanted to say that.
Okay, so our final update is 2018's simply titled Halloween, which disrupts the series' continuity yet again. To recap, the original series of Halloween consisted of Halloween's 1 to 6 as a single timeline, and then the original, H2O, and Resurrection as a second, alternate timeline, and finally the Rob Zombie remake and sequel as a third continuity. This one starts with true crime podcasters going to interview Michael Myers, and we find out that Loomis is dead, and we catch a glimpse of Mike's face, and it's clearly a while later. They only talk about that night, which is our first clue that we've reset once again, and only the first film exists, and none of the other sequels happened, so Michael's murder spree consisted of that one night back in 1978. They then go to talk to Laurie, who lives in a mini fortress, and we meet her daughter and her family, and they talk about how traumatized that Laurie is, and how their encounter haunts her life, but I don't know, maybe not live in the same town as his prison or something?
I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Anyway, no one in her family seems to care about her, or the fact that the man that almost killed her is being transferred to a prison, and are basically pretty lousy to her in general. And can I point out that Judy Greer is the mom in Halloween, Jurassic Parks, and Ant-Man, so she's basically the quintessential Hollywood mom at this point? So, Michael escapes and kills a kid, and it's Halloween night, and they say it's 40 years to the day, so in real time, 2018. And Michael kills a bunch more people, and no one still seems to give a damn about Laurie. Mikey kills a bunch of randoms, and here's something to think about. Picture Michael killing this girl and then just kind of sitting there, cutting the holes in this sheet. Michael's doctor turns out to be just as crazy as he is for some reason, but don't worry because that whole plot line isn't important since he's killed like 5 minutes later. And there's a final face-off at Laurie's house, and what a missed opportunity. You're telling me that you have Judy Greer shooting Michael Myers in the face with a one-liner, and you didn't take the chance to have her say
goodbye to these, Michael. It's a shame, really.
So Laurie's house ends up being one of Jigsaw's traps, and they burn Michael to death, or I mean, I guess they assume because they drive away without ensuring that he's really, really dead. So let's just say that we can most likely expect another entry pretty soon.
So there you have it. It's 4 movies, or 4 updates to movies that worked out pretty well in between them. Leatherface actually works pretty well if you tie it to the first movie. Leprechaun works pretty well if you tie it to the first movie. Phantasm makes about as much sense as continuity-wise as Phantasm movies can make. It's kind of the point of them. And finally, Halloween, yeah. I mean, when you ignore every other bit of continuity, I guess it has to make sense. It works with the first one, so I guess that's all. I guess that's what they were going for. But all in all, these were pretty enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed seeing the updates. We're going to be doing some more of these in the future to catch up on some of these series that I'm a little bit behind on, and get you all caught up. But let me know what you thought of this one down below. Like and subscribe, do all that good stuff. Check out the patrons, because Patreon page is there, and you can help support this channel like they do, and I'd appreciate it. And in the meantime, I'll just say thank you for watching, and I'll see you in a little while for another great video. Thanks, guys. Bye.